Welcome to Bold Talk series where creativity, leadership, ideas, innovation come together. My name is Epi Ludvik, and today I have a privilege to have a short one-on-one conversation with Christopher Rence, President and CEO at Rimage. Christopher, great seeing you. Welcome to our Bold Talk series. How are you?
Real good, and thank you for the opportunity. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Great. Likewise, well, I was looking forward to this conversation. Christopher, you really have a very interesting background. So we'll like to just go and dive in first with your career. So you built a career at the intersection of technology, security, and leadership. Can you take us to the moment in your early journey when you realized that protecting information would not just be your profession, but your mission?
Sure, I think the biggest part of it is when I was working with Anderson Worldwide and Accenture was when the World Wide Web was really kind of starting, when all the browser history and browser capabilities were there. One of the things was looking at all the data that was being collected and how there really was completely no structure around any of it. So someone could access data anywhere if they were smart enough, even within your company. So that became part of it to say, all right, data's basically the gold standard for we have to figure out a way to protect it. And there wasn't a lot of tools at the time. So that was the part that was really exciting, is to be able to whiteboard out, how are you going to segregate data? How are you going to, recognize what data is, and then how it's being used, how it's being prioritized, and then how do you secure it, protect it? And so that's really where it kind of came from. All right, here's a career part, but then also, because a big passion of it is that's, without protecting that data, there's so many, good things that can come out of it, but also so many bad things. So how do we work through it? So that's really what kind of kind of moved it. So basically becoming, part of the leadership team at Accenture, and then moving into business transformation and security with Fair Isaac, and then with Digital River, and then here with Rimage and Smartis. So yeah, so it's really kind of a life program. Every time I look at it, technology is moving so fast that it's really hard for the average or anybody to comprehend how we're leapfrogging so much technology within such a short period of time. And data is the gold standard. Everything we do is around data. So, how we want it, how do we commercialize it, how do we protect it, how do we destroy it, how do we use it good ways or bad ways? So that's what kind of really gets me up in the morning, is how do we use the technology we have, and then how do we protect, helping everybody from business to an individual.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a very tough job, Christopher.
Well, I think there's a lot of security people and compliance people around the world that are all trying to figure out how to move this needle back and forth, because we spend billions of dollars on a worldwide basis to have security and compliance and protection tools, but everybody still gets hacked. It still happens. Doesn't matter, the Department of Defense, whatever it might be, they all get some sort of compromise. So how do you get people to think about that in a different way? That's the big challenge, is, how do you think about, well, this hasn't worked. What do we have to change? Because the bad guys aren't getting any slower. They're younger, they're smarter, they've grown up with technology. You've got all the different things that are there. And a lot of people are maybe not the bad guys, but they're inquisitive. So my challenge is, how am I going to get through all of those walls? How am I going to get through all of those security layers to get to that prize? Even though I may not want to steal it, I just want to see if I can do it. So they become, cyber explorers, I guess you want to call it, or adventurers, but they can cause all kinds of havoc while they're trying to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, very good point. Now, Rimage Technologies serves industry where trust is life or death, from healthcare to law enforcement. How do you navigate?
Correct. Yeah, so Rimage is a 40-year-old company. And when we think about Rimage's technology, and anything that follows up with Smartis, is its optical disc. So when someone thinks about an optical disc, and if I go to talk to a 30-year-old CISO or CEO, the thing they think about an optical disc is their mother's, ABBA CD. They don't think about what the benefits are for optical. So when we produce optical discs, and it's used by law enforcement around the world, it's used by healthcare, insurance company, banking, different levels, is because optical disc is immutable. So anything you write to an optical disc cannot be modified. And that is when you look at everything that happens from physical disc, spinning disc to tape, all of those have their limitations. Optical has its limitation also, but it gives you immutability. And that's when, if you're writing medical records, you're writing police records, you're putting court records together, financial records, the ability today for that data to be modified, because we've sat down with the big engines and had them test that if can I get into an environment, if I could figure out a way into it, can I modify data without leaving fingerprints. And the large engines have all said yes. So they've all come back saying it. But when we put the challenge to them to be able to get into a system and go to an optical drive and write that's something that's written on it, can they modify that data? The answer is no. So that's one of the differentiators is that, even the strongest AI engines can't modify what's on an optical disc. We've used Maleficent, who is the dark web. I mean, she's not a nice person, but her response was, I can't modify the data on the disk, but I can burn your data center down. So she would go do all kinds of havoc. But that's one thing. So we take legacy technology, it's kind of like mainframes. They're still running and processing around the world. It's an older technology, but it has a need and it has a presence today that helps everybody kind of find that baseline.
Still
So it's not
relevant.
perfect, but it adds to it. It has a relevance that it adds a layer of protection that, our tagline is your last line of defense, because that's really what it is.
So innovation, it's necessary, right? It's something that every leader understands that very well. In an era where AI, robotics, cyber defense are moving faster than most organizations can adapt, how do you decide which innovations to pursue and which to reject?
So basically, we kind of take like a three-prong approach. It's really, what is our customers looking for? So what's the industry looking for? What is the problem they're trying to solve? And then what tools do we have in our kit that we can either enhance or build or create new? And then what is the baseline that we're trying to provide? So what is the outcome we're trying to provide? So when you think of, everybody wants an AI or an ML engine running somewhere, what does that thing need? So they're all like, oh, I want to put, AI on something. That's kind of like putting a new improved sticker on a box of cereal. I mean, everybody wants one and has one, but do they really know what it does? So what is it doing with the data? Because it has to go find data and it has to be able to validate that data. So that's where we look at, where does optical come in? So we have all this archiving data, we can pull it there. We know it's validated, can't be modified. So the AI engines can then go look at that data, pull it back from archives. So they always have a reference point to go back and validate and check. So, because you go scan the web and there's a million interpretations of what the definition of a round ball is. And so how do you say, here's my definition that's guaranteed of what a round ball is? So when they're interpreting it. So we really, we embrace, we're a big robotics company. Everything we've done for over 40 years has been around data. So we understand it, and we work with a lot of these three-letter agencies and agencies around the world. So then it's like, where's AL, AI, and ML, and all of this, new processing coming? How do we help with that? And one of the benefits, it's kind of a side benefit, is optical disc doesn't need the environmental support that spinning disk and tape need. So they have to be within a controlled environment within a data center. Our libraries could be outside the data center in a secured area. So it has a green footprint, but it also gives you a lot of capability that you're not dependent on certain. So it's just a part of your tail. You're going to have all this other technology, but then you have us and we give you that extra piece. So that's the part that's the innovative part, is we're always thinking of, how do we fit? How do we complement? But then how do we protect? Because that's the big part of it, because someone's always going to be trying to get through those layers. And can you be that last firewall to stop them getting any further? So that, one of the big parts.
Now, Rimage mission spans both preserving decades of data and enabling rapid recovery after disasters. Where do you believe most companies misunderstand the balance between resilience and speed?
I think one of the big ones is that when they are trying to think of, what is the recovery model that they need? So what are they trying to recover? So how do you look at your entire environment worldwide or locally, and then figure out, what do you need for day one? So if you did get, you had a flood, for one, it doesn't have to be a cyber attack. You just had a disaster recovery event, or you had a cyber event. What is the data you need to pull back, and where is that? Because, if I have a cyber attack and I have data somewhere else in the world that I'm going to use recovery, usually those cyber guys are trying to figure out, where are your points of presence are. They know you have a data center in the UK, you have one in the US, you have one in Jamaica. All right, I'm going to go make sure that if I'm going to ransom you, you're not going to get to any of that other data either. So that's the thing. So I've either compromised that data or I lock that data. One of the differences is when you say, all right, I'm going to take this set of data and I'm going to put it onto optical, that is now segregated. It's offline. Now it can be recovered somewhere else, and it's not going to recover a data center, but you're going to recover specifics that you need to bring your company back online. So what's your customer list? What is your tools that you need for manufacturing? What is the things you need for email, communications? You can pull those segments out. They're written, Every day they're copied. You can do a diff against them to make sure you had 12 Active Directory people, and today on this copy you have 35. Well, when you go to look at it, you know that something's changed and why. So you know that that data has been compromised. You can go to the next one prior to that to say, all right, it matches. Then I can recover from it. So I think that's where a lot of companies, they're all doing their best. I don't think there's anybody out there that's not, because they're trying to figure out how do you balance revenue, how do you balance expense, operating income, and then where does security come in? So it's, where we come in is we're a lower cost side of that helps them just have that next layer of protection. So that's where optical comes in the process. And that's where Rimage thinks about it, is when we're talking to our customers, it's like, I'm not going to replace all this. I'm just going to give you another backup. So you think about where the seat belts, the airbags, the bumpers, we're just part of that solution to make sure you're protected.
Yeah. Now, looking ahead, decade from now, I know it's a long time, given the fact that lots of innovations happening. But what do you believe will be the single biggest transformation in how the world treats data in a in the future?
Literally is what's the definition of data. So that's the big thing. If you think of data as gold, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's, whatever that data is, it's either going to be used for some sort of revenue generation. It's going to be used for tracking. It's going to be used for recovery. It's going to be used for innovation, scientific. So I'd look at, like 10 years out, 20 years out, the big thing that we're going to have is the engine that's needed to manage that data is going to consume so much. And if you look at just what the amount of data we produce every day, into the trillions of petabytes on top of, now we have to have all the processing power, all the environmentals, the cooling, everything that we need to keep generating this and compiling that data. That's where I see the risk is how are we going to balance the horsepower needed for us to manage the amount of data that we're generating and consuming as time goes on? And then what does that mean? If you think of data centers burn 3 to 5% of all the power in the country or in the world, and then within 2030 it'll be like 12%. Then it goes up to like 15 to 20, 30% of all that it needed for that until we get, new power sources or new capability. So I think that's where people, when they think about data, they think about it within my little ecosphere. And then they have to think about what's the bigger ecosphere. So how does the cloud processing going to take on all of this processing capability, all of this data, and you have to figure out what to do with that data, right? So it doesn't all need to be online, right? Because I'm not going to need it all. I only need this much for whatever I'm doing in a worldwide basis. So what becomes offline, warm data? What becomes cold data? What becomes archival data? And the big part of it is making the decisions is what to destroy and delete. And if you talk to companies, everybody has a hard time of, well, wait a minute, if I get rid of that data, I might need it 10 years from now. I might need it for, some sort of algorithm processing. My AI engines or my engines in the future are going to need to go back and have that data. So that's one of the big things, is figuring out what do you archive that takes it offline. So you're not draining all these environmentals, but optical has a 50 to 100-year shelf life. And so these are the sort of things you've got to find the balance of what I have for spinning disk that has to be respun, what do I have for tapes that have to be respun, what I have to optical that has to be respun in 50 years, so that then I can figure out what data I really need day to day or world to world. And then what do I need that I might only need once a month or once a year or once every 5 years? And then what do I need that I need as a referenceable data I need to pull back, be able to look at, and then put it back offline. So that's, having companies rethink that and having governments rethink that as to how do you categorize data. I think that's the big next, data lifecycle management. We have a, process along with that, but having companies understand what that lifecycle of their data is, because a big part is how they get rid of it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
what role do you see, or do you want Rimage to play in making that future?
A big part of it is between Rimage and our Savardis is the archive inside of it, is literally being able to pull all of this data out and be able to put it onto an optical storage capability that gives you access. You can either online or cold access, but it gives you the ability to move this stuff off. You can make a decision when to destroy it. To destroy it, just grind it out, really. So it's things like that, because when you look at all of this these pieces, that's where we see the benefit of it. Because today optical disk has a limited storage capability. It's like 200 gig, 300 gig, depending. The new stuff that's coming out, that's all being under development with some of the partners we're with, they're going to be at 1 terabyte. And they're going to have cases of 10 terabytes. So this just continues with the scientist that goes along with this is giving higher density. It's never going to replace all the high speed disk and high speed tape pullback, but it's a complementary capability to it. So we become part of that for long term archiving and capable. And if there is a big event, an EMP pulse, optical could be pulled back in, where some of the other ones will be restricted. So it's just we think about where the world's going. How do we play a part of that to be a safety net, but also some really cool stuff that's been proven for the last 40 years.
Yeah, very interesting. Christopher, I'm enjoying this conversation. This is a short format, bold talks. Hopefully, we get to do this another time with a longer format, go deeper in this subject. It's a very interesting subject. It's so needed to go deeper. I was looking at your profile, and what got also my attention was your private reserve farm, a family farm ranch. Can you tell us a little bit about that, like your role in that? Like, what is it that you do with that?
Sure. So part of the family, we have farms that either in the western side of their grain and farms that are theirs, and then we have farms back east that do corn and wheat and oil. So yeah, so it's been a history of these family farms, and as people got married, come together. I became the business owner of them. So that's because, I can look at the business and the capability. And when people think of, oh, where does cyber and technology fit in there? It's amazing the technology that goes into running a farm. I mean, this is not horse and buggy anymore. You have headless, combines that are controlled by satellite. I mean, there's all these things that the same thing that a business is worried about, the farms have to be worried about. Those are family farms too. This isn't like corporate farms, but yeah. So basically I can roll up my sleeves, play in the dirt, and then I can wash my hands and come in and play on the technology. So it's
Love it.
being able to bring those
Love it.
two things together, which is kind of cool.
Love it. What a great way to get that balance, right? Being
Yeah,
grounded too. Um,
that's
Christopher, it was great meeting you. I always like to ask this as the last question of these podcasts to every of my guests, and that is to get the personal perspective about the word bold. That mean? What does that mean to you? The word bold.
the word bold to me is just stepping outside of your comfort zone. I mean, you've got to, you're either bold in life or bold at work or bold. It's so people can say that, I thought something different because everybody comes in and we do our robotic things at every day. But if you're going to be bold, you're either going to take on, some sort of challenge. You're going to take on, a difference. You're going to change. You're going to jump out of an airplane because, you can, or you're going to go surfing or whatever. It's being that bold part. And when it comes to technology, really stepping outside of your comfort zone and knowing that you're going to fall, you're going to fail, you're probably going to get shocked, but you help do something, you help think of a new idea. So that's, I have whiteboards. Draw all over your whiteboard. I mean, that's the important part. So keep thinking.
Getting uncomfortable. That's the way to go. It was so great to having you. Thank you very much for joining me this Bold Talk series. Hopefully, we get to reconnect again soon. To that time, take care, be great, and be bold always. Take care. Bye
All
bye.
right. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. All right. Take
Thank
care.
you.